All right, everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Boom shakalaka.
Top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Worst Ones Podcast. This is the place for us preacher's kids who come and be the absolute worst. My name is Rudy Wilson. I am a preacher's kid, son of a preacher's man, as you see on my preacher man, rather, as you see on my tag. We got our residential honor roll student, who's also a PK, Rihanna, in the building. The princess herself, Kellie Leezy, is in the building, and the token white Terry Weezy is in the building. Terry, since you already kind of started with your disaster that's heading towards you with your father-in-law staying with you, what else is going on in your life?
Well, I mean, pretty much just that. I mean, he's coming in about 1 o'clock tonight. So between midnight and 1 a.m., he'll be rolling in. I always, like, when we were kids, like, we always used to stay with, whoever, family members and all that. And I think because of that, once I became an adult, I think once I hit the age of 25, I was just like, I'm never staying with anybody ever again. And if I can keep people from staying with me, I will. Just because everybody needs their space, man. It's fun to hang out. I can hang out with family members all day, have a great time. But at the end of it, you got to have your zone that you can go back to.
I feel that.
So it's nothing against my father-in-law. I think he's a great guy. We have great conversations. He's very intelligent. But I think even him, I think at the end of this is going to be like 10 days here. Ooh, I think he's going to be ready to leave just as much as I am. So
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's what's up. All right. Well, Rihanna, talk to us. What's popping?
Well, I officially got the notification, and I did make the honor roll again.
That's what I'm talking
about. Dean's list.
So it's official. Yes, I'm on the honor, maintaining that honor roll throughout my entire program. So I'm really excited about that.
Yes. This was the last semester?
I just have to do an internship in my final capstone, and then I'll be done.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. But I'm taking a little time off because my job is a lot right now. But today was also another big day. I cut open 2 of my watermelons, and y'all, I did it. I did. Y'all just don't understand. It's been 4 years coming. We started in the red Solo cups. Now we are here. Like, it was a whole thing. They're red. They are sweet. They are tasty.
That's what's up.
It takes 4 years to grow a watermelon?
No, that's how
successfully.
Oh, okay.
I have taken. Yeah, no, like every year I've gotten better, and I really didn't have the highest hopes this year, but it's something I've done. It's probably the only thing I've grown from when I've started. So it's like a staple. And so now I'm like, because I was going to be like, let me not grow them next year. But now I'm like, I got to go bigger. Like, I need 10 plants. So yeah, and then my niece, we started watermelon with her. I did peppers, watermelon, sunflower seeds, and some other stuff. She's really into gardening too, which I love. And her watermelon was sweet. It didn't get quite full size, but for it to be her first year, I'm very, very proud of Ivy. So
gotcha.
Go ahead, Ivy.
How do you go bigger than watermelon? How do you go bigger than like pumpkin?
I am going to do pumpkin next year, but I did 4 watermelon plants is what I have out there. So I'm thinking like maybe 10 watermelon plants. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Because so many people have been like, oh, I want one, but I have never grown one successfully. But now that I have, we about to turn this thing into a thing.
I'm telling you.
I love it.
When I was a kid,
charge them full price.
My mom used to grow those every year when I was a kid in the backyard. She had like a big, huge like patch of them. So I don't know how many it was, but 10, 12 or something. They are somehow. I mean, I remember those being really good. Like even as a kid, being like, "This is sweeter than normal." So.
Mhm.
I
Very
low key feel like you can charge more than the stores because like you had to take the time to grow it as opposed to somebody just picking it up. Like
It's organic, farm to table.
I'd be charging
There you go.
$10 a pop at least. At least.
Now I really feel like I need to come up with a name for the garden. It can't be the ghetto garden.
You upgrade.
We arrived. Okay.
Gotcha. Well, no, that's what's up. I'm glad all these great things are happening for you. Honor roll. Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I said I posted it on my Instagram, so y'all go check it out.
Gotcha.
I'm talking about y'all, Terry and Rudy.
Gotcha. I actually don't even have social media anymore, but that's I'll wait for my turn to talk about all that. But
send it to you.
Princess Kels.
I'm good. A bit emotional this week. I don't know why. It's been a stressful week.
Girl, I've been emotional this week too.
I'm a little emotional this week. But otherwise I'm good. I got my second kickball game tomorrow. My first kickball game, I couldn't make it past third base. I couldn't make it from second to third base. The third baseman was a beast. Every single time. Like every single time. I could not make it from second to third. I got out before I got to third. I can get to first, I can get to second, could not get to third. So we're going to see tomorrow. I'm not even talking about a point in making it home. I just want to make it to third.
Right.
Send me your schedule because I really want to see you make it.
Okay.
How does the third baseman prevent you from getting to third? Wouldn't it be the people throwing the ball to the third baseman? Like, don't they just stand there and catch it?
Right. I mean, so she would catch the ball and then run to me and get me out.
Oh, okay.
Are y'all playing the same team or something?
She looks like she looked like she was like a legit athlete still. Like
that's why they put her at third. They like they can make it all the other bases, but you gonna make sure nobody make it home.
Right. Listen, she was a beast. So could not make it past third. I was in the outfield, so there was one chance that I had to like catch the ball. But it was really my second baseman that missed it, and then I tried to catch it, but I was a little slow. So tomorrow I just want to do better than 2 weeks ago. We had a bye week last week, so then 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm looking forward to another game of kickball. But otherwise,
did anybody make it past third? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, the score was 8-6.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Y'all won.
She just had your number.
We lost.
She just had your number, is what it was.
Right. She was not letting me. And at first I felt bad. But then other people were getting out on third too. So I'm like, okay, it's not just me. But I could not make it to third at all. Yep. And she would come at me fast with the ball. And I'm like, at one point I think I pushed it. Like, hold on, you coming too fast. I'm out. It's fine.
Right.
It's just kickball. We don't have to take this that serious.
I mean, they had terrible attitudes. I mean, they were. I had a meeting at the end, 5:30 meeting at the end. So I kind of stepped away, but they had a whole argument, stopped the game for about 10, 15 minutes. It was a lot. So tomorrow we play district level people. So like the assistant superintendent and like district level people. So it should be a little more low key.
Right. That's what you think. You're going to see another side of them. They're going to be worse.
I'm like, this somebody supervisor. Like,
big boss. Okay.
So we'll see. They lost last week 10-0. So we should win.
Gotcha.
So we should win.
Gotcha.
So
they're gonna like that big boss energy.
Gotcha. All right. As far as me, I mean, I'm always good for the most part. I mean, I did, since we last recorded, I definitely had a little week on my hands where this was back in September. So September 14th, I totaled my car.
Oh no.
Headed to a comedy show.
Wait, you said what year?
No, this was September 14th, like last month.
Wow.
Like a couple weeks ago.
What happened?
So I was basically trying to. So I was in a turning lane trying to turn onto the interstate, but I had the flashing yellow. There was a lot of traffic, so all the lanes had stopped except for the far lane, and basically like the person in front of me, they went ahead and got on the ramp. As I'm inching through the lane, like I'm trying to see, whatever. I didn't see anybody. Literally, as I'm trying to even go past the last lane to get to the ramp, the interstate ramp, this lady came through flying. But even though she hit me, technically, I got the ticket because she had the right of way. She technically had the whatever, and I was turning. So, but yeah. So and then, but earlier that week, like that Sunday before, I had woke up with this sore throat. I thought maybe I was catching a cold, strep throat, something. Long story short, by that following Sunday, which was 3-4 days after the accident, I ended up in the hospital for 3 days because I had an abscess on my throat, or on my tonsil rather. So that was the whole thing. And then I also, while trying to treat the sore throat before I really knew it was an abscess, because it was getting worse. I'm treating it for all the cold symptoms, never got any cold symptoms, never had a runny nose, coughing, nothing. But as the days progressed, I can't even talk. My mom ended up having to go to the hospital with me. She ended up going and staying because of just her personality. But the initial visit, I couldn't even talk for myself. I was my shit was swole up. It was bad. I couldn't eat. It was a whole thing. So, but what was I saying? Oh, so while treating it, I was eating on the halls and it took my tooth out. So that was so yeah, it took so I tell people I lost my car on the 14th. I lost my tooth on the 16th, and I was in the hospital on the 17th. So
I know it's
What?
I was not say that.
I'm just wondering, what are you doing biting on halls?
It was at the small part. It was small, but see, one thing, if you know anything about the military, when you get dental work in the military, it's always a risk. Okay, and so it was basically one of my implants. It just pulled them up. It pulled it right out. So I gotta.
Did it hurt?
Was that painful? Right?
No. It didn't hurt. I mean, it didn't bleed or anything, but I felt it when it came out. I felt it slide out the little socket, it attached to it, and it just pulled it right out. So yeah. So
that's a rough week.
I mean, it's all good. Trust me. One thing about me, God has got me to a place in my life where I know even when all that type of stuff is happening, it's all him. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I wasn't really tripping. You know what I'm saying? And even with being in the hospital 3 days and on a clear liquid diet, I lost about 12 pounds. So that's always good. Get a little head start on the diet. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to maintain that and not find those 12 pounds back. So, but since then, I've been great. I've been back. I'm back to normal. I don't smoke because a nigga life on the line. So with
smoking indefinitely.
Well, as far as I know, because with an abscess, it's such a risk. Once you have one, you always at risk for another one, and smoking definitely, it'll definitely fuel that fire.
That makes so much sense. When did you start smoking?
That whatever. So that Saturday was the 16th. So I didn't. So I guess the 15th of last month.
That makes so much sense.
About what?
About you. That makes so much sense. Okay. All right.
That doesn't really explain why you don't have social media anymore. But
yeah.
He forgot. He was.
Yeah, I forgot. No, I forgot. Yeah, I still don't get what you mean, Kelly. Because to me, I definitely maybe you just never, I guess, felt my energy. But yeah, that's definitely been there. High or not.
We've been here 3 years, and we have seen you whatever. But your tone and your approach in the last week has been different than I feel like, and I speak for me, from what I've experienced from you in the last 3 years.
I
We've
just
been
think
doing it for almost 3 years.
I just think it's because you're emotional right now. That's all it is.
No.
I think it's because when you say you were emotional, I think that's all it is. But
no, because I wasn't emotional last week when you sent that message. I was in a good mood actually when you sent that message. But I that makes sense.
But that message wasn't in a bad mood though. I laughed at you a little when you said something about at work. You said something about you was doing over something at work or something. I laughed in the message and everything.
We folks don't always see the changes in their mood.
No. There's definitely a change for sure. Right. But I'm saying, but in what you're particularly talking about, trust me, that ain't it. But either way, the social media thing. I mean, it's just another God be on my ass, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. He basically told me to get off. And I and of course I went through the debate. Like we're talking about, like just delete the app, or we talking about deactivation, and he was like, delete that hoe. So I deleted that hoe. I found a way how to get all my content off of it because I didn't want to lose all my pictures and videos and stuff from over the years. Because to me, you know what I'm saying, whether somebody does a documentary on me one day or whether I just can show my grandkids what I looked like when I was in my 20s and 30s, I think it'd be, it's always good to hold on to imagery. So
isn't that going to be difficult as a comedian? Because I've only known one comedian who said no to all the social media, and he wasn't a comic very long.
Well, I've already been a comic for a pretty long time, and I mean, it's like I can, gauge, is it going to be difficult as a comedian and disobey God, or I can try to stay on it to try to make it easier as a comedian, and then, I don't know, maybe my computer blow up in my face or something, and now I definitely can't do comedy. So
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just from personal experience. I'm like, wow, how are you going to promote your shows or build an audience or?
Well, I guess God gonna show me if you don't want to kick me off. So we'll go with that. So, but yeah, so that's my little update. So as far as the topic today, in the spirit of Destiny's Child, I titled this "Say My Name, Say My Name," because that's what I guess we're going to talk about. And Janessa, I'll let you get into it a little further, especially since this was your topic. But in reference to us acknowledging Christ versus calling it something else.
So this is not a real polished thought. It was really a bunch of rambling. So y'all gonna get the ramblings too. So essentially, it's been on my mind. I've just heard more and more people talk about thanking or being grateful or centering around or referring to in any type of way to either a higher being or the universe or things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if everybody is necessarily a Christian or not. I've also heard the term that they're not religious, they're more spiritual, stuff like that. And oh, sorry, y'all. I didn't even eat the candy corn yet. Like I just got in my hand. But if they are Christians, is that okay to refer to God as a higher being or the universe, or do we need to acknowledge and set clear boundaries or distinction of who we serve, what we're about, stuff like that? I just kind of think over time, even since I was a kid till now, a lot of people in our generation have, I wouldn't, to a certain extent, left the church or are experiencing or trying to experience something different, but it's still under the umbrella of religion or something like that. And so just a conversation around that. I don't know what the actual question is, but those were the thoughts.
I will say this for starters. I definitely, so out of everything that you said, probably 99% of it, I wouldn't say I necessarily subscribe to, but the one thing that you did say, I definitely probably would say I'm definitely more spiritual than religious. Now, I don't know if I mean it the same way that others mean it, but I know, I guess, like with religion, things can get a bit traditional. They can get a bit formatted and even low-key kind of scripted versus me, I guess, speaking to the fact of I am a follower of Jesus Christ, and I, focus on my relationship with him as opposed to, let's just say, like adhering to what religion is even defined as, or even says that you have to do or not have to do. But I definitely run into a lot of people, even people who I known from church, like you said, who they say more things like higher being or the universe or the most high, or then I know a lot of people who acknowledge God but don't acknowledge Jesus, or even think Jesus is just some nigga that's trying to take God's credit, you know what I'm saying? Or so Jesus just just a prophet or just whatever like that. Then we get into the whole, his name ain't really Jesus because J didn't exist in the back then and blah blah blah. But I'm like, yeah, but nobody says anything about Jerusalem or anything else that has a J in it. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely run into those conversations. I talk to people a lot who feel the way that you're even describing right now. And I guess my thoughts in reference to if somebody who's considered a Christian or a follower of Christ or any of these things, like how they should handle it. I mean, if the Bible, I guess, is what you're going by, I think that's like the route into where you should kind of, search out your answer in reference to how you should handle it, and not take on the opinions or even the point of view of, just say, outside influences. Now, at the same time, due diligence is necessary, because I wouldn't say you just necessarily go with everything people in church have told you either. Because ultimately, and I'll kind of end my opening statement with this, like ultimately, like, because everybody, just say, for a lack of better terms, is responsible for their own life, and they'll receive their own judgment. Terry, I'm gonna mute you because I don't know what you just clicked, but it was so loud. But everybody's gonna receive, have to stand in front of God, themselves, and so on and so forth. So there is a level of, you need to build a relationship and understand, your relationship with God for yourself. But it does get very dangerous and very tainted, especially nowadays. The more you can find on the internet, different perspectives, and then a lot, sometimes different perspectives be sounding a little legit. You know what I'm saying? Like, other religions may sound more, kind of legit or whatever. Other practices, I mean, even we've talked about the sage and all that type of stuff, the zodiac signs. I had that conversation on the podcast, on my other podcast, and there was people I was really shocked. I mean, they full blown like Christ, but it was like, yeah, but I believe in that zodiac, whatever type thing. You know what I'm saying? So I think the more exposure people have to it, it is definitely making people kind of teeter more than they used to. But in my humble opinion, I, as a person who subscribes to, just say, being a Christian, or even as the Bible say, people of the way, I definitely acknowledge, I say Jesus. I let people know like who it is that I'm referring to. I don't just say the Most High, like I'm saying like God, and not just any God, but Jesus daddy, you know what I'm saying, specifically. So that's kind of my, I guess, opening.
Well, I mean, you basically just described Judaism, which is, they believe Jesus existed and he was a prophet and this and that, but he wasn't directly the Son of God. But
no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying he's directly the Son of God.
Well, I mean the difference that you're talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You're describing the difference between Christianity and Judaism.
Gotcha.
The main difference, at least. Go ahead, Janessa or Kellie.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I guess if you're not a Christian, you could do whatever you want to do. I think it's important that we, as Christians, acknowledge God for who he is and Jesus for who he is. Like, the Bible talks about how there should be no names above him, and not supposed to have idols, and no other God before me. And I think when you start interjecting higher beings and universes, that's not necessarily directly saying, oh, that's higher than God, but it's kind of creating your own version of a God. And so I think, some people might have different convictions about that, but for me, you just got to be really careful with that. And then also I think, especially for like maybe younger people or young Christians, it can potentially be confusing. If we're using the universe and higher beings and the Most High and not directly correlating or linking it to God, like exactly who we're saying, because the universe and higher beings did not, like perform the miracles and save your soul, and it's a specific person, it's a specific situation. So I just think it's kind of important that we do identify who we're talking about. I do think, as we talked about before, how some people, especially our age, have transitioned away from the church and they're kind of creating or experiencing their own thing now. That's not what they maybe traditionally grew up in or with their grandma or their mama taught them. And I don't know, like, I think at least for me, the Bible in like the instructions, it definitely has a place. I kind of feel like sometimes people are creating their own religion, picking and choosing what they want from the Bible, and creating like whatever, a situation that suits their lifestyle. And like, it's very hard for us to understand. I know I just speak for me. Sometimes some of the things that the Bible tells us not to do goes against what we want to do, but it's for our good. At the end of the day, even though it might not feel like it, it is for our good. And when you start picking and choosing and creating your own situation, it's like you're making the rules that are supposed to protect you and be for your good. You're making the rules that fit your lifestyle or what you want to do, and just saying that it's good. And especially in the day of social media, we've talked about this before. You could start your own church or your own situation. You don't have to have a building. You just get your camera off of your phone, live stream it, and whatever. And so you can, in today's world, spread whatever message, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, to the masses. And it's just something that's just kind of been on my mind. Like, man, is the correct word actually going out like it needs to be, or is it being clouded by people's own interpretations or their own twist on it that's being projected to the masses as what it is? I don't know. And I will say this because I'm a little long-winded. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. But my dad was telling me, we were having a conversation. He was having a conversation with one of his pastor friends, and he's realizing more so with the younger generation that he has to go back and preach the basics. Like, there's just, you can't just jump in and go there. Like, the very basics of the Bible that for us, we been knew or been learned or whatever. And I think that's just kind of indicative of where we are as Christians. Like, and how do we correct that? Or I don't know what the word is. I can't really think today, but I thought that was very interesting as well. That there's just like a whole generation who don't really know the Bible or God or church or whatever, kind of the way that we experienced it. It just seems a little diluted, which gives an opportunity for anything else that's, not what we learned to kind of figure in and take place. That was long to get all that out.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I hope y'all got it.
But I think you took the words right out of my mouth better than I would have said it. because I agree. I often wonder. Well, one, I'll say, I think both of you kind of said this. Well, let me not. That as a Christian, I feel like God needs to be stated. God, Jesus, like that is who we serve. That is what it is. There is, I know sometimes, I mean, and you use most high, and I know sometimes we talk about most high and God, and as relate to God. But I also know sometimes, right, they talk about the universe or a higher power, and it's, to me, it's an intentional way of not saying God or Jesus. Like if you're using, Jehovah Jireh, most, something like that as a synonym for Jesus or God, fine. But if you're using it as a way to intentionally not say God, then to me that's different. And I think it's hard for me to say, to understand where you are in your Christian walk. Secondly, to your point, Janessa, I often wonder where, and to your, well, and kind of to your point too, Rudy, what you were saying too. I understand on some level when people say I'm more spiritual than religious, because like you said, Rudy, sometimes religion becomes, in this box, it has to look this way all of the time. And I think that's one way to look at it. But I also wonder, as Janessa stated, how often people say that as a way to, you said it so nicely, have spirituality fit their lifestyle. I wasn't gonna say it that nicely. I really like the way you said that. I was gonna say something a little more. that was great. Because like you said, it's what we had a guest pastor the other day, and he was talking about. He was talking about when he used to be in the club, or when he used to do these things, and the things that the Lord brought him out of, but as Christians who still want to be in the club, or use profanity, or have sex before marriage, or or whatever, it's easier to say I'm spiritual and not religious, because then I don't have to abide by the exact wording of the Bible or what I was taught growing up. And so I wonder how often that's used in that way. Also when we say the Lord knows my heart. And I think we've talked about that before too, where it's like I can do what I want to do, say what I want to say that may not align with Christianity, but the Lord knows my heart. And I'm spiritual more than I'm religious, so I don't really have to align with the things that the Bible says. So I often wonder that as well, in terms of when people say spirituality versus religion. I get it on some ends for sure, but sometimes I'm wondering, like, are you just pushing the boundary a little bit?
No, for sure.
And then thirdly, in terms of the conversation that you said your father had with another pastor, it made me think about, I learned the basics in children's church, in youth church. And so then when I went to church as an adult, I transitioned into big church, as we called it. And I transitioned into big church. I had some of the basics, some of the foundations that I learned from children's church through youth church to keep up with that more intermediate, advanced teaching, And I think you find a pastor that aligns with your style. I think we've learned that pastors have different styles. And so you church hop to find, what aligns with your style. But I wonder if pastors are feeling like they have to go back to the basics. Where was it the church that didn't do a good job for those younger generations, children in youth church, building that basic knowledge? Or was it the parents not taking their children to church to get that basics? And so that when they left the home and they went into college, into adulthood, they were able to kind of find that spiritual space, that religion for themselves, versus however they're brought to Christ in their adulthood, and then we have to start back in the beginning. And it also made me think of, like, again, like a classroom, and how you have to differentiate instruction for different learning levels, different intellectual levels. You know, you have to consider home life. And, you know, in my schools, I have students who are homeless, who haven't been in school. I got a lot of kids now who haven't been in school since COVID, who's coming from different countries, all of these things. And so in those classrooms, you have to differentiate instruction to make sure that each student gets what they need. I often wonder, are pastors able to do that in their sermons to understand their congregation, the needs of their members, to be able to differentiate their sermon to make sure that people get what they need? And I think it's also important too, those small groups, the Bible studies, what's that thing people had? Sunday school. I said on Sunday before church. Sunday school. Those things I think are helpful too. But I know for me, I've gotten to a place where I'm like a Sunday church service only. And I don't know the last time I've been to Bible school.
Right.
You know, and so other people, some of those beginner Christians, them knowing these other spaces and avenues that they need to go to learn those basics, to be able to understand what's going on in a big church so that it doesn't stray them away. Like I heard a pastor the other day, and it was, I don't know what he was talking about. You know, I don't know. And maybe because I was tired, and maybe because I really didn't want to be there, but I was just like, nope, that's not it. And I went to a church and the pastor wasn't there. They had a guest preacher, and I was just like, this is not for me. But yeah, so those were, I think I rambled too, but trying to address your many your many points. Those were kind of my thoughts. Hey y'all, sorry to interrupt, but we have a few church announcements. Follow us on Instagram at TheWorstOnesPK. New content coming soon. We also have a TikTok at TheWorstOnesPK. No content yet, but continue to check us out. If you want to, when you listen to our podcast, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Just make sure you type in The Worst Ones Podcast and you'll find us. And when you get there, make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, and you share. Thank you to our 500,422 followers. We love you so much. Now, back to the show.
Well, every time I've ever heard anybody say the term, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, I've never gotten a Christian vibe from that ever. Like, it's been more of an agnostic kind of a thing. Like, oh, I want to believe in a higher power, but I don't want to attach myself to one in particular faith in general. You know, usually those kind of people are the most susceptible to joining a religion. In fact, as it, you know, because, oh, I want to believe in a God. Okay, well, let me tell you about Allah, you know, and they go that way, or they come into a Christian church and be like, well, let me tell you about Jesus, you know. So I've always kind of took that as like as an agnostic thing. I do like the Daniel Tosh joke. It says he's talking to a girl and she says, well, I'm not religious. I mean, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And he goes, okay, well, I'm not honest, but that's interesting, you know? So, and it does kind of make the point because it is a cop-out. I've always thought that being agnostic is kind of a cop-out. You know, if you want to believe in something, then go search. But for me, I've spent more than 20 years asking this very same question and looking at other religions. The first time I ever saw a Quran in my life was the one my father gave me, you know, while he was preaching. He's like, because I would come to him, I'd have all these questions and be like, you know, because I'd hear things or I'd think about it and I'd be like, well, what about this? And what about this? And he goes, look, and he's like, here's a copy of the Torah, which is the Jewish Bible, essentially. And here's a Quran. He goes, go read, look, find what it is. But I spent, like I said, more than 20 years looking, and to the point where I got to a point where I just said, you know what, I'm going to stop looking. This it's not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing. Not just for your faith, but for your mentality. Mentally, it's not a good thing for you. It does not breed peace in your mind or your heart. So I've stopped asking all these questions because, and it kind of leads to the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, the knowledge part always stuck out to me because that knowledge, and the more knowledge you ascertain and the more you dig this hole, the closer you're getting to the lava. You know what I mean? And you keep digging, looking for answers and looking for answers. And I don't think it ever really helps, but I do think it helps to separate you from whatever faith you had before. So maybe when it comes to this particular thing, ignorance is bliss is more of a, just have a good feeling, and just stick with that. Stop turning over rocks, because when you go digging around, all you do is get dirty. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely levels to it, because it's especially if you're at a very vulnerable, susceptible kind of space. It may be, I guess, depending on what angle you look from somebody just say who is a Christian, who's just say raising a Christian, a child that they want to be Christian. It can appear dangerous to that parent if their child is exposed to too much and then may have a different belief than them type thing. But I know for a fact, and mind you, his relationship was already strong in the Lord by the time I was born. But my father, I remember growing up, I remember he used to watch, like Louis Farrakhan and different people like that. And not because he was like being converted or whatever, but my dad is very interested in what other people, how they think, what it is that they believe and stuff like that. And not to necessarily combat them, like he's gonna like call them up and try to go toe to toe, but even just do even more research on what it is that he believes, and then as he's even teaching other people, he can even say, this is why I say that this is the way to go versus that way, because I've actually saw both sides. But for somebody who's not at that level with that mentality, you may see both sides and choose the way that just say appears to be wrong, if you will, or it may not appear to be wrong in your eyes, but just say if you have a parent that wants you to partake just in their religion or whatever it is that we want to call it, they may find just a fault in that. And even with the whole like exposure, like with the internet, it goes to what you were saying about the knowledge terror. Like it's the whole exposure thing. I mean, I just think it affects people different ways, because some people can find out stuff and it puts them more into what they already believe. Some people can find out stuff and then they can just be, unstable in all of their thinking and all their ways. Anytime somebody says something new, they're kind of just, going with the wave or whatever. And I know people who, go to church or who even believe in God and Jesus and all this stuff, who also use crystals, you know what I'm saying? And do that whole, type of thing or whatever, which then I also know some people who, who are in church who think stuff like crystals and yoga and all this other type of stuff is witchcraft and, whatever like that. So like you hear, So you hear all of these different perspectives inside and outside of church. And that's why, like, for me, as low-key dangerous as it could possibly be, I would tell somebody to if you're already on the path of God, especially from where I stand, I definitely say seek God for direction. Because even like with me, like I've looked up like even the history of the Bible. Like, why do we even, like who was the first, when did it first get translated? Who was the person who translated it? Why, the King James version, where did that come from? Like, I've looked at those different things, not because I've questioned it my whole life, but as I'm even getting closer to God, I'm trying to get even more definitive answers for these different things, because people aren't necessarily just having conversation like, what church you go to. It's like, nah, that nigga Jesus ain't do that. You know what I'm saying? Or I think I mentioned it before. Like, I know some black people who can't even believe the story of Christ because at some point somebody painted Christ as this white man with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they refuse to believe that a white man whatever saved they black ass. This is literally their words to me. You know what I'm saying? So like, being the fact that people have so many emotional thoughts towards what it is that I stand firm on, I definitely do more research to put even more firmness in my stance. You know what I'm saying? Not to just say, well, I grew up in church, and my mama said, and my grandmama said, and my daddy said, my daddy a pastor, and he said, you know what I'm saying? Like, even with stuff that my dad preached, like I look it up, I research it, you know, scriptures or sayings or things that I've been told, even growing up in church. Like a lot of that stuff I've went back and looked at a second time, because I don't want to just take anybody's word for it. Because the Bible's, you know, saying, do not conform to the things of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. To me, I don't want to conform either way. I don't want to be a follower of Christ or a Christian just because that's what I grew up in, or just because that's what would make my mama proud. You know what I'm saying? Like, if this is something that I'm going to actually, you know, like I said, stand firm in, I definitely want to build that foundation on something that's solid, as opposed to the moment somebody hit me with something that I ain't expect, now I'm questioning my faith. Now I'm questioning, you know, now they done made me think about it differently, as opposed to saying, yeah, okay, I hear you, I understand your perspective, but here's still, you know, where I stand. So I am at the point of, I ain't gonna lie, I don't necessarily like dig into other religions in the sense of like that, but as far as even digging into the history of what it is that I say that I believe and where this stuff comes from, even using like this little thing right here, I got it from my dad, but like this Strong's Concordance or whatever, that has the translation into Hebrew and Greek of, you know, of the Bible. Like, you can, you know, look up a specific word and then find out the original definition and the original word of where it was translated from. I do that type of stuff just to ensure that what it is that I say that I believe, if I ever have a conversation with somebody, or when I have a conversation, because I always have these conversations, I'm not just saying, well, this is how I grew up, so this is what I subscribe to. I'm more or less saying, no, this is the proof in which why I say what I say, or stand where I stand.
But kind of like what I said before about knowledge, that's a double-edged sword, because denying knowledge not only limits you in your understanding, but denying it to the point where it becomes ludicrous to a certain degree, it actually will turn other people off of any sort of religion. Particular example, I was at my aunt and uncle's house earlier this year over in Memphis. And I love them. They're great. They're some of my favorite people in the whole world. And we were just sitting there talking, eating ribs. It was great. And then somebody was talking about cows being born. I said, don't you find it weird that a cow can just come right out and 5 minutes later it's walking, running around? And then they said, yeah, but a human baby, it takes, you know, years to get to there. And not even thinking, I just said, well, that's because when we started walking, like science tells us why. It's because when we started walking upright, our hips narrowed. So the gestation period got cut in half. Babies used to take almost 2 years to gestate before you'd give birth. And because the hips narrowed, the opening was smaller. So you had to have a baby earlier just to physically be able to have that baby. And as soon as I started saying that, my aunt went, no. We don't, no. We don't talk about that kind of stuff at this table, in this house. And it shocked me, because I know they're very religious. I know they always have been, but that's the first moment I realized, like, oh, they're in that camp of the earth is 6,000 years old, you know? And I felt embarrassed, mainly because I was like, I'm not trying to offend anybody.
Right.
But it definitely kind of changed, you know, part of the dynamic. It kind of changed the way I looked at him. Not like I disliked it or anything like that, but it definitely changed the way that I looked at their opinions
Right.
things, so it definitely turned it a few degrees off there,
Yeah.
because it's not like you have to believe in one thing or the other. My father used to do a great sermon on the creation of earth and how God took 7 days or 6 days to create the earth and then he rested. He's like, yeah, but who's to say God's day is the same as our day? He's like, God's day might be 1 billion years. You know what I mean? So creating all this stuff until the evolution of man, these two things could work hand in hand. It's not one or the other. But again, I think that kind of closed-mindedness is the other side of the sword on that, because then it limits your potential. I'm not saying go out and seek all the answers and try and get on 100% truth of what is what and get on God's level. But I'm also saying don't go to 0% and just, you know what I mean? There's a way to do it, I think, with a respect, but also a curiosity.
For sure. And I think because I have conversations with people who say things completely contrary to what it is that I say or even believe, but I never, to your point, I never shut them down. Like I let them get it out. You know what I'm saying? And I don't, unless like I feel like the Holy Spirit speaking to me for whatever reason to say something, I don't necessarily try to combat it. I just I go ahead and let them talk, because ultimately I want them to receive me in love, as opposed to every time Rudy come around, it's going to be him trying to tell me that I'm wrong or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? And I do think, even going back to the whole spiritual versus religious thing, I do think that religion and which then breeds religious people, cause that type of mindset, because now you are closed-minded because you are in, like Kelly said earlier, this box, as opposed to if you're looking at it from a more spiritual mindset, even as the Bible even talks about the difference between, or the war between the flesh and the spirit, more or less that spiritual mindset, you're going to have a more open thought process. But even to the point that I think a couple of y'all made earlier, there are people using the whole spiritual religion thing as a cop-out, for sure. But if you are not using it as a cop-out and you are just not wanting to be closed-minded because of religion, then looking at yourself as not so religious, I think is where that's beneficial. And then this is my even last thing going. I was going to say this earlier about what Kelly was talking about as far as Bible study and stuff. Your uncle, Kerwin Lee. I remember somehow a Bible study from Berean popped up in my algorithm. Somehow I ain't never looked it up or whatever kidding me, but it popped up. But the way, now mind you, it's mainly older people. It's not like he was teaching a youth class or anything. It's old, rooted saints. You know what I'm saying? Like that was in the congregation. But he literally was starting from like Genesis 1 or whatever, and he was teaching in such a basic, principle but profound way. And I was just like, man, this is really good, because he's not even assuming or taking it as, oh, all these people older, they know, you know what I'm saying? They already are at this level just because of their age or whatever. Like, he was literally giving them a course as if he was almost even talking to kids, but not in like a belittling way, but just in a very foundational way that I was just like, man, this is really good. And I don't know if you notice, he has this habit of like repeating himself. He'll say it a couple times, like,
in real life too.
right. Like he has this whole little thing, the way that he does it, but it helps it stick. And even the way that he was just going through it, and he I don't even think he made it out of Genesis chapter 1, maybe even chapter 2. Like, it wasn't even like he just kind of sped through it. It was almost like you have to then come back next week to get the rest of the foundation. But how he did it, I thought was very, very good.
Quick question: was that recently?
I mean, definitely within the last probably 3 months or so. Yeah.
It's funny because at our church, my dad is going through the Bible each Sunday. He's starting with Genesis. So I was like, I would wonder if they probably have talked. I just saw your uncle last week. Anyways, he was at my great aunt's funeral. He was speaking.
But yeah, but that's what I meant about the differentiated instruction, because I think a lot of people, and I know we've talked about preachers and them being called or not called, but what I love about my uncle, is that he's a teacher. And so in the midst of that preaching, he is teaching. And so, and like you said, and it's not in a space where, like you said, because he has a range of members. From I know a lot of people who are young in Christ need that basic teaching. And then there's people who are more advanced and been at Berean or been in other churches for a while. But like you said, he's able to give basic concepts in a profound way. And so he's able to bring in those young Christians to those seasoned Christians into this one message. And for the young Christians to not feel like it goes over their head. And for the for the advanced Christians, for them not to feel like this is too baby. And I think that's a gift. I think that is anointment. That is, this is what you're supposed to do, versus some of the preachers who were just able to construct a sermon and give that sermon. You know, when you're trying to, as a pastor, of course, grow your people, then you have to realize that it's more than just preaching and constructing a sermon, but being able to bring everyone together. And I'm super proud of my uncle for the legacy that he has built in Berean. But I think part of him being able to do that is because of that anointment and him being able to not only preach but teach. I've been to a lot of other churches in Georgia where I sit down and I'm like, I know why you still only had 10 members.
Right.
Like I know, you know, I know why you still begging people for money. You know, those ones where it's 100 people that's gonna give $100. Like I know why you still the building fund that y'all didn't start at 15 years ago. But yes, and so that, and I wasn't even thinking about my uncle when I said it earlier, but that's exactly what I mean. And again, and I can see that some people may not like that style. You know, some people may say he gives too much of the basics and I need more advanced. I know all of that. And that's fine too. You know, when they go and find that person, but when you see, or that pastor who does that for them, but again, when you see Berean in Atlanta, and you, like I said, equate that to kind of his teaching, his preaching style, then I see why. I know why it's been able to grow at the rate that it has, and it is where it is now.
Yeah.
This is kind of, and I know we're a little tight on time, but it just got me thinking about other pastors and preaching styles. And there has been a uprising, in my opinion, of not necessarily preachers or pastors, but motivational speakers.
That's so funny you say that. Oh,
we may need, can we say this one for the next topic?
Tony Robbins. Yeah, we can.
I think that is huge.
It's so funny you say that, because my homeboy called me, and I'm not even gonna say the pastor because I don't want to discredit him. I'll wait for the next episode. But he said, he was like, Bishop so-and-so, which if I said today, we definitely all know he is. But he was like, Bishop so-and-so, man, like, he ain't no preacher, but he is a great motivational speaker. And I'm like,
and with the props, with the animations, with the you know, we could talk about the pastor that spit on the main, you know, like with all of that, I'm like, where are we going? I think that's an excellent topic.
I do too, because I was thinking about how some of these motivational speakers, especially the younger ones, use tactics or saying or phrases to preach. Like the scripture itself, if there is a scripture, you know, it'll be Jesus wept, but then it'll be like a whole sermon on church sayings or things we hear in church. Oh, the Lord won't put more on you than you can bear. But there's like more to that scripture. As with a lot of things, what is it? The one talking about God will give you the desires of your heart. But then they forget the rest of the scripture type of stuff. And so for lack of better words, this kind of seems like some of these motivational speakers are like dumbing down the word. And so
they don't know it themselves, because they're not, they don't know it.
Well,
it's not,
when you talk about your uncle, and I know my dad does this too, but they all come from the same group of people, you know,
Mhm.
the same situation.
Mhm.
But my dad's like that too. He's a Bible teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna have about 50 verses in the sermon, because every point he's saying, he's going to link it to a scripture in the Bible, and he's going to expound upon it. And so that might be another reason why some of these younger Christians or people who may not have grown up in church don't have that basic knowledge, because what they get in is animation and
Right.
strobe lights and
Motivation.
Right.
and motivational
Right.
speaking,
Right.
and like changing get lit to something else, and you know, coming up with an acronym and stuff like that. But we
Well,
can talk about it another day.
Well, it's always that assumption. Personally, I find it more blasphemous the people that say, "Hey, I am a follower, I'm a believer, and I know that the Earth is 6,000 or whatever years old." I find that more blasphemous than an atheist saying there is no God, because at least the atheist is saying, "I don't believe that this exists." Whereas this person is saying, not only do I believe it exists, and not only do I believe that God is there and he listens and he's real, but I also know what he knows. I know for sure, even though he didn't tell me these things, I've made up my mind. You know what I mean? Like the real definition of blasphemy is not saying there is no God. It's saying that I know God exists and I'm turning away from him. That's the real definition of blasphemy, at least the way I've been taught it. So yeah, I tend to say, you know, go get your knowledge, get your information, do what you want to do, seek it out, but know your limits, because that it could turn on you pretty quickly, and you could turn into, you know, the ones that you say are, you could be worse than the ones you accuse.
And even just say for Christians, even as you learn and grow, it's also very important that you don't, like Terry said, turn into the ones that you whatever, because you it's easy to get that knowledge and then now you look at everybody is wrong. You know what I'm saying? You look at everybody and then now you become so harsh on trying to shove the truth down their throat, as opposed to knowing the truth and then asking God, what should I do with this truth? You know what I'm saying? Like, how should I move forward with it? As opposed to,
I believe Exodus would call it your heart being hardened.
Right. Sure. But I know even when you're trying to just say go about it the right way, you can easily then turn into, you know, that quote unquote religious person who's now closed-minded, and not in the right way, but in a way of, like, you're not even operating in love anymore. You're just operating in trying to show what you've learned, as opposed to, you know, asking God to lead you on how to correct somebody, if necessary, if that's even your assignment. Maybe you should just hear what they say, and God, you know, maybe you plant the seed, and like I said, and God will be in control of the increase later. But just be careful with that. Just ultimately operate in love as you know, as you seek out whatever it is that you're seeking out, ultimately. And I think that you'll be okay for the most part. God will reel you in how he needs to. That's on him. That's not on us as humans. So Janessa, you got jewels?
I do.
All right. Let's single her out, everybody. Janessa's jewels.
I do not like this. All right. So I can't remember if I actually did this one, but it's what I've been going through this week, as most of my jewels are. So this week's one, it might be a repeat, is, and I actually think it is, but oh well. God's not in a rush, you are. And as me and Kelly talked about in our intro, like, I've been emotional this week. There's some things I've been praying about for years, and they just, like, I'm not even seeing a glimmer of hope about it. And it's just getting to a point where I'm getting impatient and frustrated. And the scripture came to my remembrance thanks to that good old, I guess, lifelong of church. But 2 Peter 3:8-9 says, "Do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. And while I'm pretty sure that's talking about slow to like judgment and the rapture and stuff like that. But I also kind of took it as he's not as slow as keeping his promises that he's given us too while we're here. And I started kind of reflecting on just things that God has brought me to and how the timing was perfect, and how if I would have done something at a different time, or I wouldn't have gotten certain opportunities. And during that time, though, it was like I was frustrated and impatient and wanting things to work out. And so I had to kind of remember what God has already brought me through and brought me to. And then I had to kind of reflect on this verse as well. So for all of our followers that might be feeling like me and just feel like God's kind of dragging his feet on some things that we've been asking for, just to remember that God is not slow in the way that we think of slowness, and time is different with God than how we do. And reflect on what he's done in your life, and hopefully I'll give you, just a little bit more strength to make it another day. That's all I got, because I'm on the another day, and and I'm holding on. I'm barely holding on. I'm just the next day. So.
No, so for one, you definitely never said that for sure. That was definitely a new one.
That was a new gem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely new one. And that's real though. That's definitely real. Especially since not with mental health being a bigger thing, and the word anxiety, you being, is another word that we've kind of latched onto. Like, I think it makes us even more anxious because we can even identify it. And yeah, it's very important to just be patient, because one thing I've learned is you could try to rush it all you want to, but God gonna move on his time regardless. So you can either just go ahead and just relax and just let him do it, do it how it's going to happen anyways, or you can worry yourself to death and still get it in the exact same time frame.
Right.
So that's what's up. I appreciate that. For sure. All right, Princess Kells.
At Princess Kells 51, still private.
There you go.
You can find me at JRihanna_. We have fun over there. I just posted about the watermelon, so if you want to check it out, go on and see what you see.
Right. Terry Weezy.
At Terry Wayne Comedy on all social media platforms. We don't have fun over there. And you can also get the book on Amazon, which is Unclaimed Ashes, still on sale.
There you go. And shout out our producer at Risa _G RHESA_G, as in Geraldine, which is her middle name. Amen.
So the official podcast, your other podcast, did you cancel that page too, or somebody else runs it?
I only have the YouTube channel for that and the church. There's only two that I do. I don't have any Instagram or Facebook.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, all righty, guys. Well, we appreciate you guys listening and watching as always. I always encourage the audio because that's where the money resides. So please, please check out the audio as well as the video, because we are gorgeous people. So we would love for you to check us out as well. And we are the worst ones. Until next week, we out.
Top of the world.